Hey buddy, utilizing the power of search engines in everyday life is quite commonplace. If we need some information, we go to Google or another search engine of our liking. And search engines are great at finding information in all its forms: text, video, sound, and so on. But when we touch on test questions, it is very often the case that you need to find some device or several devices. And that's where the complications start. Or rather, it might have started if there had been no Shadam. And that's what we're going to talk about today. More specifically, learn how to use it properly. But before we begin, a small but very interesting announcement. You've probably heard words like neural networks, machine learning, data analytics, and the like, but you wish you were an expert in these fields yourself. And not just learn all this, but also get a job in this specialty. If yes, then you should definitely check out the Data Scientist Profession course from Skillbox. What are the pros and why exactly is this course so good? Well, in my opinion, one of the key pluses is that the training can be done from scratch with no practical experience in programming. And get this experience directly during training because you will learn not from theorists but from specialists working in well-known companies. That means that when you finish the course, you'll also have a year and a half of seniority on your resume. What else is interesting to offer in this course? Well, quite a few actually. For example, you'll learn how to program in Python and R, visualize data, and apply neural networks to solve real-world problems. What's more, you'll also get help getting a job on your finals. After all, you will be trained on real data, and at the end you will create your own recommendation system or computer vision project, which you can then safely add to your portfolio. Well, we're getting to the subject of our video. What is Shadan? It is commonly referred to as a search engine for the Internet of Things. So, in other words, it is a search engine that searches for an internet-connected device, the device and information about them. Using DAN is a bit more complicated than the same Google. It's harder until you understand how it works. The principle of operation of DAN is actually very simple. It searches for and collects banners. Not the ones on buildings, but the ones that describe the service used on the device. Banners for SHAD are the main TSA of information. Not just the banner, of course, but more on that later. One example of a banner is a web server banner, that is, a header. To see the header of a web server, you can, for example, drive the command and drive the address of the desired site. What we learn from this headline? First of all, we see that the HTTP protocol and status code is used. By submitting statuses, you can get a sense of how responsive the request is. All is well, the request is successful. 300 is a redirect to another page. 400 something is wrong with our request. 500 is something wrong with the server, some problem on the server. This is followed directly by the headline itself, which contains a variety of technical information. Roughly speaking, the point is that absolutely any protocol has a banner, and absolutely any banner has technical information. It varies from protocol to protocol, of course. But the point, I think, is clear. It is this data that the DAN collects. And considering that very often the banner contains quite a lot of data describing the device itself, this can be very useful. In addition, the DAN also collects the method of device data such as geolocation, operating system, and so on. Before you start working in DAN, it makes sense to register. This makes sense if only because we will have more search results, filters available to us, and can get our API key. You'll need it a little later. The registration process itself, I think, do not need to describe. Everyone will understand. Here I will tell one moment related to this video, and at the same time I will express my respect to Shadan's support team. When I started preparing an article for this video, the link to the article will be in the description. I ran out of limit requests very quickly. Usually with anything else, how many requests you need and that's it. And here, every example I've given you have to check, screen, then video, record. In short, the requests were many. And I've already mentally prepared myself to take a long time to do this article, because it took a long time to have day requests. But then an interesting idea struck me to take advantage of the fact that I am now a blogger. I wrote an email to Shad's support asking for paid access to write an article, and they opened it for me, hence Shad's support, and we move on. The easiest way to search is to type in the name or manufacturer of the device we need. For example, if we host TP-Link, we will see the devices and banners found on the right side and some statistics on the left side, by which we can also filter the device. You also have to remember that this is not Google, and therefore the query to search for is treated as an exact expression without any variation. The problem is that such a search is hardly useful due to the sheer number of results. unless you're in the business of collecting statistics. It should also be noted that by default it shows results collected over the last 30 days and searches only for banners, not taking metadata into account. To remedy this situation and concretize your search results, you need to use filters. Filters are essentially just the instantiation of a query. They work as query refinements. This is where you need to consider that to maximize the use of Dan, you need to understand it very well. First of all, what you want to find, and secondly, how it works. You need the device. What software is used, what versions it has, what protocol, but also other technical information depending on the device. The good news is that chances are what you want to find has probably been looked for by someone once before. Which means he could have shared his search methodology and somewhere published the query that yielded the result. Oh, and in general, for practice and training, it's a good idea to study what and how people search. To do this, Shadan collects the most popular queries. The link to that page will be in the article too. Now for more detail on the filters themselves. As you can see, the TP-Link query gave us almost 1.5 million results. That's a bit much to say the least. To reduce the number of results, we can start by filtering them by country. The country filter is used for this purpose. And after the colon, without spaces, enter the country code. For example, we'll show the results for Russia. To make it easier for you to figure out the codes, I'll leave a table in the article on the site. We'll list all the country codes. Other filters work on the same principle. So the logic behind their use is as follows. First, we specify the query itself, and then we write the filter, and after to, without a space, the values for the filter. If the value consists of more than one word, it must be enclosed in quotation marks. Shadan's most popular filters are country, like I said, filtered by country. City will only show data for the selected city. For example, City Moscow will only show results for Moscow. The OS filter will find a specific operating system, such as Linux. The geo filter is a search by geoposition. You need to use a colon to specify the coordinates. The port filter will only show results for the selected port, such as port 22. Hostname will only search in a specific domain zone, e.g. hostname. RU will be searched in the domain zone. The Filonet will search the specified network range. The product is a search by program name giving away a banner, such as experienced. The filter is given quite a lot, so if someone wants to look more in depth, there is documentation on the site you can read. You should also know that if we want to remove the results of a filter from the output, we need to put a minus sign in front of the filter. For example, if we write country UAK, we will be shown all search results for Ukraine without results for Kiev. It works the same way with other filters. To make it more clear how this all works, let's look at some real-world search examples. Let's find webcams in Moscow that use port. Write webcam country Moscow port 80 and run the search. As you can see, he found 4 such cameras. Now for a change, let's find, for example, engine servers running the Linux operating system with a 5K open port. To do this, we enter the query engines, the Linux operating system. As you can see, there are quite a few of these servers. The results we get can be further filtered by the parameters we see in the table on the left. For example, by country, by organization, or by operating system. This way we just apply filters a little bit faster. I think it's more or less clear how to form queries. This is certainly one of the most important points, but by no means all that is necessary and important to know about. You can work not only through the website, but also directly from the terminal. And in some situations it's even more convenient and faster. First, you need to install the Python library for Dan, then add your API key. To add an API key, enter Dan and no, and enter the key itself. We enter the Dan command and see help on how to use it. Traditionally, I have translated. The article on the site will be the Russian version. This is a general reference. Also, for each command, there are additional filters and parameters that you can specify. For example, to see the filters for the search command, write Dan search. Now let's understand how it works. The algorithm is in principle quite simple. Depends on the situation, of course, but in most cases you can start with a team. It will show how many total results there are for the query we are interested in. For example, let's look at how many Severas in Russia are woven with port 443. We see from the answer that such servers are not a measure and shovel such a number, whatever our goals, there is no point. The request needs to be clarified. Copywriting. This command allows us to quickly estimate the possible number of search results. The next command that will have to be used frequently is it allows us to do a search on our query and download the results to a JSON file where each new line is a new banner. By default, the first 1,000 results are downloaded. If a different quantity is needed, the limit parameter is used. As you can see, we saved 100 search results. If you want to process the data received by the download command, use the command followed by the fields by which we want to filter the data. For example, given fields and list the fields. Let's filter by IP, by organization, and for example by geoposition. Also here we can see what is the name of the file where our data has been saved to, and we just specify it here. As you can see, we got the results of the IP address, organization name, and geoposition data, city coordinates, and so on. The next command is host, allows you to view host information. For example, Shadam host and host some IP address. As you can see, we saw where that address is in the open port. Well, one of the most relevant commands, because it allows us to do what we did in the browser before, that is to search, is the search command. And specify the search query we need, which we form in the same way as we did in the browser. If we need to display the result only for certain values, we add, just as we did when using the command. As you can see, gave us the results we needed. Well, I'll tell you about a few extra Dan tips too. When you search for something, you can visualize the location of the results you find by going to Maps. And he'll dot our results on the map. Practical usefulness is situational. Personally, I have never once had such a need. Still, the opportunity is there and it's worth knowing about. Sheridan saves all the screenshots he comes across to himself. For this purpose, there is a section called Give an Image. These are mostly remote access screens or surveillance camera screens. Again, the practicality of this feature is not entirely clear to me, but for the sake of interest, you can take a look. Another interesting feature of Dan is that it collects vulnerabilities and exploits. Their search is a little different. We need to specify the platform we are looking for the vulnerability for, and the kind of vulnerability, and click search. Well, that's the end of our introduction to Shada. As you can see, his capabilities are not weak, and in some situations it can be very useful.